All right, they told me I could grab a mic out and say hello to everybody. Welcome everybody tonight. Thank you so much for coming out. Yes, we get loud. I'm Clyde Lewis, Ground Zero, and I'm glad all of you are here tonight. I just want to let you know that this is part of a series that we're going to start up. Ground Zero has been on the air for 20 years. Wow. Yeah, long time. And in fact, on April 1st, we're going to be doing a Ground Zero 20th anniversary replay, and you'll be able to hear some, I guess, classic moments, some very interesting moments that we've had on the show over the 20 years we've been around. We've been mostly in Portland. We came here in 1999. The show started in 95. A little radio station, a little AM station called KCNR. Then we moved to K-Bear 101, and then from there we came out here to KOTK, Max 910, KXL nationally, and then we went into, well, we were the first actual radio show of our kind to be podcast. We also podcast and we also broadcast Art Bell when he was, yes, Art Bell was, he was also broadcast with us on the internet. So we've been around for a long time, and so now we've decided to somehow get to the people and let them know that we want to be face-to-face. We want to do more of these shows. Some of them free, some of them not so free, some of them more expensive than others, but hey, they're worth the trouble because a lot of people, we're going to bring some people in now that are well-known names. We really eventually want to produce a Ground Zero Con. Would you guys want to go to a Ground Zero Con by applying? That would include people like, you know, Governor Jesse Ventura, maybe Alex Jones, and a few other people that you've heard of, George Norrie. They can all come out and hang out with us too. I've managed to, you know, develop relationships with these gentlemen for some time. And you know, even though that we're kind of like the underground version of everything, and we like to keep it that way. We like to keep ourselves pretty much under the radar because of what we get away with. And so that's why we're so glad to be here in Portland, and we want to expand more. I don't know if we're going to do it for another 20 years, but we certainly are getting a good start by being national. We've now been national with Premier Radio Network for 3 years, and hopefully more years to come. Expanding into television, which of course that'll be something we'll be announcing soon with something called the Con Channel, which is going to be an interesting venture. We'll do some more Ground Zero lounges. So when we do Ground Zero lounges like this, we'll be able to televise them on national TV. This is going to be something that we're going to try to develop. That's why we want to get the crowds going now, get them ready for it, get them used to it. Because we used to do Ground Zero lounges when I wasn't on the air. I used to tour bars, Masonic lodges, whoever would have me, libraries. And we do these very personal invitation only type of gatherings where we can give you information you're not going to hear on the radio, you're not going to hear on TV, and tonight's no exception. I wanted to, before we bring on Anthony Patch tonight, I wanted to let you all know that some of the investigations that we've been doing into CERN, I was aware of CERN in 2008, 2009, and back then I was scared of it. And I know that we've had other colliders. Brookhaven is a collider that is in New York, and they were going to have a collider in Utah when I was there. They were going to call it Clyde the Collider. I thought it was kind of flattering, but they decided to move it to Sweden, or Geneva, Switzerland. And so they had more power and more money backing it, and it got to the point where this thing was going to be a monster. We started seeing some things that didn't necessarily look good about this thing. One, a lot of money being put into this with science that's not going to benefit either of us, only that we're going to have this knowledge about the Big Bang and knowledge about different dimensions and all this stuff. And while that's fun to talk about, it puts the Earth at risk, and probably already has put the Earth at risk. The Brookhaven labs, during the time of Brookhaven's operation, we were seeing a lot of plane crashes happening off the coast, New York. As we had mentioned, Swiss Air Flight 111, which crashed. 2 Brookhaven scientists were on that flight. Egypt Air 990 that crashed. John F. Kennedy Jr.'s plane, his Saratoga plane, crashed. And in fact, they were commenting that there was a green fog that was on the water when he crashed that plane. And of course, Flight 800 TWA, which of course conspiracy theorists have already said was hit by a missile, while there's still a number of things that never went answered when I was doing the investigation, and that is, why was NASA investigating this crash, and why is it that Brookhaven a number of people said there was a big bright light that came out of Brookhaven that probably brought the plane down. Could have been some sort of a plasma ball or something coming out of the electromagnetic collider. Anthony Patch and myself, when we did the show the other night, were discussing CERN and whether or not it had an effect on the crash of this Germanwings Airbus. And while we didn't come right out and say that CERN was involved, we did talk about aggravating what is known as the crust that is in that area. It's called a current crust. And what they've been investigating is whether or not the areas there in Switzerland, the Alps, places like the Andes, the Himalayas, whether or not there are crusts that are electromagnetic or electrocurrented, that there's something that is fortifying these crusts that make them a little bit more electrified. Well, this woman that was a geo mapper for the Pentagon was on the plane that crashed in the Alps. Just they said the suicidal pilot did it. She was there, actually being called to actually do a report for the Pentagon on supercharged ground near the area of Locarno, which is about 300 miles outside of CERN. Locarno, and there's another place like Lograno. Everything outside 200 miles, 300 miles or more outside of CERN was positively charged underground. Everything that got nearer to CERN and beyond CERN to the other side was negatively charged. So what we have here is we've got a positive and negative charged ground loop around this area, and they're trying to figure out whether or not that would cause problems underground, whether or not it would cause problems with geogravitic waves, and whether or not geogravitic waves could be aggravated by charges such as what we see with CERN. This was something that we wanted to talk about, but of course, when the mainstream says it's a suicidal pilot, immediately people will say, well, you're wrong, get over it, don't give us any more information about this. So we're going to give you the information tonight. I'm giving you the information tonight that they are investigating the possibility of supercharged ground in the Alps around CERN, some 340 miles out. There are paper upon paper upon paper. They were investigating this before. It's one of the reasons why this Pentagon geosatellite person was heading in to do the investigation. She died, unfortunately. Don't know if there's a conspiracy to wipe her out. We're not going to go that far, but we certainly find this interesting that they're finally coming up with these ideas as to what is supercharged and what is negatively charged, and how it may aggravate the crust of the planet. So, if that's something that you can investigate on your own when you go home, then we're doing our best to give you the information that's important. But it's only part of the information. The man tonight that will give you most of the information is Anthony Patch. We're going to bring him up here now. Welcome to the Ground Zero Lounge, Mr. Anthony Patch.
Are we on? Are we on?
Yes.
We're on. Good. Welcome. Thank you. I appreciate you being here. Time is probably our most precious commodity, so we'll try to use it wisely tonight. I would like to change the format just a little bit of most of these types of presentations. Typically we wait till the end for questions, and I really would like you to walk out feeling like you've gained the information that you came here to find out about. So if you have questions that you would like to throw out right now, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if you have questions you want to put out, I'm not necessarily going to answer them right now, but it'll give everyone in the room a sense of where we're going to go with this. Because I really would like this to be more of an interactive. If you feel more comfortable just listening to me, that's fine. But if you want to pose questions, have some reactions, let's make it interactive. Because I'm not here to be a lecturer. I'm not a college professor, okay? So we don't really want to make this a boring evening. To that end, while I'm setting up a few of these slides, go ahead and throw your questions out if anybody's bold enough to do that, okay? Fire away. Yes, ma'am, go right ahead.
Yeah, I was curious as to when the collider had its mishap on the, was it on the 21st through the 23rd, somewhere in there? And did it happen before the plane crashed? Or what was exactly the time point? Because they really weren't coming out with when they actually had the mishap.
I can give you a real short answer to that so we can proceed on. 21st, the alleged grounding of the magnets within CERN, within the Large Hadron Collider. That predates the 25th crash. Go ahead, anyone else? I'm just going to work on this a little. Come on. Yes, sir. Go right ahead. Back.
Do you personally believe in the Higgs field, or do you think that's just a bit much?
It's theoretical. I do believe theoretically it exists until something else comes along to replace it. Go ahead, next question.
Isn't the real concern about the singlet? Is that how you...
Strangelets.
Strangelet? Isn't that the real concern?
That is one of many concerns. Yes, sir. Right here in the front.
Have you seen the Netflix documentary called Particle Fever?
No, I have not, and that's a great question. And short answer beyond that is, I am a monk. Go ahead, throw them at me, people.
If the universe is
Yes, sir.
ever expanding, which theoretically avoids the Big Bang Theory, then what else is CERN trying to prove?
That's a big question for a big universe. Big Bang is a theory only. There's another theory called the electric universe, which we may or may not get into tonight. Good question.
Do you see this having any spiritual implications? It seems that Aleister Crowley was opening these star portals and seeing these extraterrestrial beings who, a lot of people are saying that there's actually not so much a outer galactic phenomenon, but a spiritual phenomenon. And maybe this could be something to do with the occult trying to manipulate these upper dimensions.
Sure, an explanation. Sure, we were referring to the possibility that there was a accidental or momentary opening of a portal and beings were seen. I have not been able to vet, in other words, to verify the source. Interestingly, it came out on the 1st of April, but we'll get into that too. What is April 1st in the United States?
A little bit.
I mean,
the anniversary of Ground Zero.
There you go. We can all go home now. Yes, sir.
How long have you been researching CERN, and what is your educational background with this type of...
I'm a hobbyist.
Okay.
Okay. I have an interest in physics from a hobby standpoint. I do not have a formal education in physics beyond Physics 101 at UC Berkeley, my alma mater. However, I've been studying CERN earnestly since 1998. I'm a retired paramedic out of Oakland. I spent 27 years as a private sector paramedic, and I've always had an interest in science. So as a hobbyist, I love to dig into this stuff, and I've been fortunate enough to do some writing lately. Great question. Anyone else? Yes, sir, in the back.
Among many different religious beliefs, denominations, there's something that they call the veil that shrouds the minds of the people. Do you think at CERN their motive is to try and peel back a portion of that area?
Again, yeah, I'm going to repeat the question. Is there a veil that they're trying to peel back at CERN, spiritual or physical? Again, they're indistinguishable. Yes, there is a veil spiritually.
Yeah.
There's an awful lot of occult activity at CERN that's going on. I'm sure this audience is well up to speed on a lot of those aspects, and that's part of why we're so interested in it. But also physically, yes, the question was about the Higgs field earlier. Yes, they're trying to open the Higgs field, and we will get into that definitely. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Do you believe any components of CERN is reverse engineered UFO technology?
I consider myself to be open-minded to just about anything, and that's why I'm considered a wacko. It's very possible. And when we go back to, and I won't go into a long deliberation on it, but we go back to, Roswell reverse engineering of, downed air spacecraft, and that leading perhaps to the semiconductor industry, the advances we've seen in computers and that sort of thing. there's every possibility that that's happened. The other possibility is that a lot of the technology has been handed down by the fallen angels back to our spiritual.
Anyone else?
Yes, ma'am, again.
Yes, do you know if the Axis Mundi has been affected by their previous experiments, and is there any increase in the Earth wobble due to that?
Yeah, I don't necessarily have the expertise to answer whether or not the Earth wobble has been affected by CERN. If we go back to what Clyde was alluding to in terms of the effects on the crust, the gravimetric forces, the waves of gravity that are moving through blocks of granite like the Andes, or in South America near Brazil, the Andes, but also the Alps, I'm thinking of.
The Adriatic Plate.
And the Adriatic Plate, basically a denting of that. It's conceivable. It's not an area that I've looked into a lot. I'm aware of the pole shift that's already migrating. I'm aware that the wobble is there, and it's prophesied even that we will have a pole reversal. And it states in Scripture that the earth will wobble like a drunken, not sailor, but as a drunkard. So we'll come back to some of those too. Anything else? Okay. If you have questions, if you have comments, you can interrupt me. This is not a canned program. It is, what's up? We have
a mic over there too.
Okay, great. If you want, you can grab the, or I'll bring a mic to you, the roving mic, if that makes it more comfortable for you to engage with me. I do have a number of modules of PowerPoints. It can get very deep if you want to go deep into the physics of it, or we can skim right on through many of these things and focus on the big picture and not get into the minutia. But there may be folks in here that would like to get into the details. So again, this is going to be driven by you. And let's see how good I am with this. Study him carefully. This is my doppelganger. $1999. The Wizard of Evergreen Terrace is the title of this episode of The Simpsons. This has to do with the Higgs boson, the so-called God particle. That is a PR stunt. That is to continue the funding and the progress in the military-industrial complex agenda of CERN. What this works out to, in this little formula here, just the top, we're only going to cover the first formula briefly. That works out to, if you do the process or work through the theorem, is 777 gigavolts of electricity. Interestingly enough, when the Large Hadron Collider, quote, discovered the Higgs boson and worked it out, went through the just mountains of data that came out of the detectors, and we'll define a few things like detectors. The actual energy mass equivalency of the Higgs boson is 125. Homer came up with 777. Now those of you that are into numerology, the occult, will pick up on 777. Anyway, he was 652 giga electron volts off. A little bit of background to The Simpsons. Now, I don't watch TV. Haven't owned a TV in 4 years because I'm a monk, right? Okay, that's all you're going to walk away with today, is this guy's a monk. Anyway, many of the staff writers for this show are mathematicians, and one of them has actually produced a book about the math of The Simpsons. So they work it in on purpose. And there's a lot of things that happen with The Simpsons. Anyway, let's move on here. Where's my, there we are. Study it carefully. And so we move on to Alice in Wonderland, Parting of the Veil. and we shall descend down the rabbit hole of CERN. By the way, pardon me, I have a little bit of the snuffles from the good old pollen that we're dealing with around here. These are some of the topics that Clyde asked me to cover. We will address these, not necessarily line by line, but they'll get worked into the discussion here. How many people have heard of Project Bluebeam? Yeah, I would think most everybody has by now. What is terraforming? This is an open forum. What is terraforming? Yes, sir.
Terraforming is when you change the molecular makeup of a planet to match a planet that is more suitable for a host, changing basically the magnet pull of the planet.
Yeah, changing the environment for a new species. I think you may have heard that in popular culture. A new species. Yes, terraforming the planet can be done by CERN. What do we see in this image that is infamous? Yeah, exactly. The 666s. There he is, snuck in there again. Okay, Brookhaven National Laboratory. The reason I put that up, as well as the ALS, which is the Advanced Light Source Building at Berkeley. Berkeley has a synchrotron, as well as Brookhaven. I don't want to go into a lot of depth if this is going to bore people. Do you know what a synchrotron particle accelerator is? Okay, basically it's a small version of the Large Hadron Collider. These laboratories are doing what I call proof of concept work, meaning they're working out the processes that will then be transferred over to CERN. So the little brothers and sisters are performing the experiments that will then take place in the larger machine. This is an aerial view of the Large Hadron Collider itself. The smaller ring that you see here is one of the 4 particle accelerators that we will show in some other diagrams that progressively accelerate these particles. They're accelerated in a particle accelerator to a certain level, and then they are injected into the next accelerator and so forth until they reach the 27-kilometer circumference main ring of the collider itself. So this breaks it down a little bit. When you look at these names, CMS, ALICE, ATLAS, LHCb, these are particle colliders. That's where the crossing of the stream that occurs with Ghostbusters takes place. You have 2 circulating beams going in opposite directions of protons or other subatomic particles. CERN is French. The history behind CERN briefly, because we only have 3 hours. There's an awful lot of material to go through. We could spend days on this. The history of the particle collider, not just the Large Hadron Collider, but other colliders, was for the purpose of modeling nuclear warheads, nuclear explosions. As you know, with the SALT Treaty and other treaties we've had for nuclear devices, there have been reductions in the number of warheads that countries can have, ours and Russia specifically. And so in order to maintain the stockpile, which they did out of Livermore, Livermore created many of the nukes that our military has. They needed to be able to model what would happen with particle collisions that would mimic a nuclear explosion. And therefore, the money was pumped into it. The military-industrial complex is what we're talking about. A question was posed to me one time online, and I think Clyde asked me this off the air in our first interview. Who runs CERN? Who's behind it? The short answer, military-industrial complex is entrenched in every country, every culture, every economy. They are pushing this. They are running it. Sure, there are nefarious groups behind them that are doing that, but that's where the money comes from. That's where the motivation comes from. So they have moved beyond the modeling of nuclear warheads into creating, basically, a cannon. And this is a cannon of subatomic particles that we'll get into in a little bit. So we've gone through some of this already. Again, the breakdown.
Anthony?
Yes, sir.
I had a guy post me a question on Facebook that I wanted to have you answer if you could, because I was thinking the same thing. He said to me, he says, there's nothing on this planet that can generate that much power. How is it that this thing can generate power? I think I know the answer, but I want to know what you have to say about that, because you're generating like some 17 trillion volts of power to slam underneath the earth. We're looking at very, very high intensity, speed of light, slamming of particles, proton particles, electron particles, negatively and positively charged particles. Like you said, the very thing that we were warned in Ghostbusters not to do, unless of course you're attacking the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. So, you know, what can you say about that, the power that goes behind it?
Yeah, again, there is no elementary or stupid, I hate that word, question. Okay, that's an excellent question. All of your questions are excellent. That's why we're here. We're talking about two things. We're talking about energy, electrical energy that's generated from a collision of particles moving at 99.99% the speed of light. We're also talking about the fact that these particles are gaining in mass as they're accelerated. And therefore, we have a mass energy equivalency. So when we talk about tera-electron volts, trillions of volts of electricity, yes, we're talking about electricity, but it's also, that's a measurement of the mass of these particles. They are creating particles that don't ordinarily occur naturally, and therefore only exist in the rarefied environment of the detectors within the Large Hadron Collider. And so you are seeing them represent two things, mass and electricity. Think of a nuclear explosion. What occurs when a nuclear warhead goes off? What's happening at the subatomic level? Anybody want to throw that out to me? This is not to trip anybody out. I just want to engage you. Yes, sir.
Is it that matter is being transformed into energy?
Exactly. Einstein's E equals mc squared, right? They're doing the reverse of that. If you picture E equals mc squared, replace the E at the beginning with m, which is mass, and put the energy next to the c, which is speed of light squared. You are converting, you're inverting the process. That's an excellent answer. Essentially, they are doing the opposite of what a nuclear warhead does. It's not a fusion reaction. It's not a fission reaction like you see in a warhead. It is actually the conversion, okay, of energy into mass. And they are creating particles. The gentleman in the back asked about strangelets. We'll get into that in a moment. And also black holes. Dr. Stephen Hawking. Does that answer you the question, or your answer, hopefully I reflected your answer properly?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a reverse of E equals mc squared. Okay, here's a picture of the tunnel. This is the beam line. This is where the action occurs. These are two beams operating in opposite directions around the main ring, 27 kilometers in circumference. The beams are protons, or they can be any number of subatomic particles. Later this year, they will get into colliding particles of lead. They've done proton lead. They've done some low-level testing with lead particles exclusively, but they're moving to that later this year. When we talk about the magnets are around the beams. The purpose of the magnets is not to accelerate, but to confine, back to Ghostbusters, confine the stream, okay? Here's a cross-sectional breakaway. These are the two beams right here. The rest of it is carrying current. The magnets themselves are super cooled. The environment surrounding the tubes, as well as the magnets themselves, is colder than outer space. This is achieved by using helium as a refrigerant. Again, a cross-section. The beams reside here. These are the magnets in brown, and also the confinement structure around that. Close-up of what we're discussing. Doesn't look like much, but when they're 27 kilometers in length, the magnets, and they're running thousands and thousands of amps of current through them, they're generating massive magnetic fields to confine these near light speed beams. Again, a close-up of it. I'm going to move quickly through these. So we've mentioned the 4 points. Those are the colliders that you see here in the main ring. Again, the stages of acceleration approaching the main ring. At this point, you see the divergence of the streams. Here, all the way through all those steps, they're circulating in one direction, and then they're spun off in a beam line and circulate opposite directions, and then cross over when they're directed to cross over within the core of the detectors. There are different types of detectors. They call them experiments. The detectors have different types of detectors within them to look for different types of particles. Again, cross sections of the principal detectors. If I need to stop, or if you want me to stop on anything, I will do that. I'm just going to move through for the sake of time. These are massive machines. This is a person, to give you a sense of the scale. Again, you can see the two figures represented at the base. Why would you build something so big, so massive, so expensive?
These are nuts.
They are nuts. Okay. I hold nothing against the people working there, except I think we can put them in a category of nutology. We will get into the motivating factors. We touched on it a little bit, the occult. This is the assembly of one of the detectors as they're putting it together within the chambers. Recognize that these things are 300 feet below ground, and they take them down by way of these massive cranes in modules and sections, and then assemble them in a horizontally linear fashion. Some of the people that are working, again, to give you a sense of the scale. Pretty famous picture. Just the inside of the detector. Represents what happens when particles collide. This is what's going on inside the detector. These are actual photographs of particles streaming away from the collision of particles. Now, when I speak of particles, I mean we're talking about bunches. Picture a short section of ball bearings, and those ball bearings in bunches are separated by a distance. They begin in a separation of 75 nanometers. Then they move them closer together for different experiments to achieve higher collision rates of protons or lead ions. And as they move the bunches closer together, they increase the amount of collisions and therefore the energy and therefore the mass of the particles. If you happen to have gone to my website, you'll see a schedule of the power levels that are going to be achieved at different times this year. There are groups of experiments that take place during groups of weeks, and progressively we're moving from bunches that are far apart of particles to bunches that are closer and closer together. and therefore we're able to achieve 14 tera electron volts in September. There's our good buddy. Now I say that God has a sense of humor, and I think Mr. Einstein, Dr. Einstein would agree with that. Give me a moment to shift gears here. Are there any questions at this point while I'm doing this? Is there a particular area you'd like me to go into as far as defining detectors or particles or components?
Is it just two particles that collide into each other at one time, or is it multiple?
Again, an excellent question. I will always say that it's an excellent question, unless you throw something at me like a tomato. Okay. When we talk about bunches of particles, we're talking about billions of particles. And then you have bunches that are stacked together in a line forming the beam. So you have thousands of bunches circulating in one direction, each bunch comprised of billions of particles. And then you have the equivalent number of protons that are traveling in the opposite direction. And what they're trying to do is collide as many particles together as they can. If we're talking about the Higgs boson, it's to try to find this particle. The Higgs boson occurs about 7 out of 4 billion collisions. It's a very rarely occurring particle. Okay, so they need a lot to discover the particles they're looking for. I mean, that's the cover story, but to achieve the power levels and the masses that they're looking for.
So they need more electricity to be able to see that Higgs boson.
The electricity arises from the collision. Okay? So what you're doing is you're freeing energy. I want to be more specific rather than saying electricity. They do call it tera electron volts or giga electron volts, as in the case of Homer Simpson. But what they're talking about is the release of energy, and they put the measurement scale of volts to it, but it isn't necessarily electricity in the sense of what we think that is generated and sent through transmission lines. Come on, Clyde, wake up. Gotcha.
I have a question.
Absolutely, go right ahead.
When you're talking about the particles, what part of the elemental chart are we talking about? Are we talking about uranium, plutonium? What?
Yeah, that's, again, a very good question. Excellent question. Everybody say excellent. Okay, we're awake.
Hey, along
Yeah,
the same line.
sure.
Are we adding elements to the periodic table? Is what's going on here?
You could say that in a sense, but we're at the quantum level. We are below the level of atoms. We go molecules, atoms, and we go below the atom to the component of the atoms to the quantum scale. And we're talking about not the periodic table of elements or adding to them, although we could be doing that. They have mutated or transformed the alchemy that's going on. They have changed lead into gold, by the way. Very minute quantities of it. Certainly not economical in the sense of what it takes to do that conversion. But to answer the question, no, we're not dealing with the periodic table of elements because those represent atoms or molecules. What we're talking about is quarks, gluons, muons, baryons, hadrons, all of which are, and neutrons, protons, all part of the atom itself. Okay, someone asked about strangelets. Go right ahead, sir.
So are they using collisions to get energy so they get the 14 tera electron volts so they can do more right? So they're creating collision, taking the energy so they can intensify the magnets to line up more particles so they hit more head on, right? So they use the magnets
Sure.
to stabilize the particles so they can aim.
Right, the magnets
And so
can
with
find the
more
stream and
electricity
aim
in the
them.
magnets, they can line up the particles more precisely so they hit more head on.
That's correct.
And then they use that electricity so they can get, am I understanding that?
No, you're pretty much on track there. Let me repeat what was described. essentially what we're looking at are collisions that are generating energy for the purpose of increasing the mass of the particles that they are accelerating. So yes, they are using the power to help increase the speed at which the particles are traveling. But the problem is there's a threshold. Back to Mr. Einstein. You cannot accelerate mass to the speed of light. You can get very close to it, like they are in the LHC, but you will never be able to cross that threshold, and that's when the particles gain in mass. And that's because of the speed that they're traveling at and the power that they're putting behind those particles, which is radio frequency acceleration. So yes, they are generating power to help with the acceleration, but the real point here is they are trying to develop enough power to open the portal by separating the Higgs field, which is comprised of WIMPs, weakly interacting massive particles. That's the theoretical structure of the theoretical matrix, the Higgs field. Yes, sir?
So just like, so I can understand
Sure.
what the Higgs field is basically, like, for lack of better terms, would it be like gravity for particles? Does that make sense? So like the sun in the middle, you know, and they always picture it like a top cloth with the ball rolling in. And the sun's in the middle and everything's kind of swirling around it. Does the Higgs boson field just something like that? So it's like the heavier particles that are in this field attract more particles to it, or is the Higgs boson like a particle, like a piece of something, or is it a force?
Okay. The Higgs boson is a theoretically occurring particle. And I say theoretically even though they claim that they found it experimentally in the detectors as a result of the collisions. The Higgs field, if you picture it much like a fabric, a woven fabric, and particles like the Higgs particle and other subatomic particles will move through this matrix naturally. We're not talking about in the collider right at this moment. We're talking about out in the cosmos, in the universe. And when they encounter the Higgs field or this woven structure, they slow down. It's much like the particles moving through molasses. But as they slow down, they gain in mass.
So really, they can manipulate Higgs field faster than light travels, like nothing.
Right.
Because
if you go,
that's what gives it the mass.
Right,
So
up to the point of the speed of light, it has mass. If you cross the threshold of the speed of light, now you move to the conversion of mass to energy. Okay? You're okay. I think it'll work out as we move through this a little bit. So, the question came up about strangelets. There's two major hot button topics or labels: black holes and strangelets. Has anyone heard of strangelets before? You have, sir. Okay. Anybody else? I'm curious as to where you've heard about strangelets, because very few people have heard about them. Just kind of throw it out where your source of information was. Oh, he's pointing at me. You need to vet. You need to vet that source, sir. Where else? Oh my gosh, we have a conspiracy in the room. Sir, I'll pick on you. You look very professorial.
Great. From various papers, and I cannot quote you these.
No, that's okay. I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No, it's fine,
Yeah.
because I would love to learn more.
Okay, great. Let's
You
move.
seem like professorial.
Well,
You can teach me.
I'm just a hobbyist
As am I.
and a monk. Okay, just so that it doesn't appear that I'm making this up, I'm going to provide you some of the background publications. It has been said by CERN for many years that they don't make strangelets in the collisions. And yet, I'm going to show you that they have, and that they do, and why that's important to us. I'm going to give you the quick overview. You have quarks, which make up protons that are being collided. When they collide, they split off into quarks. You also have particles called gluons. It sounds like glue, and that's essentially what they do. They bind quarks together. And when these strangelets occur, they occur as a condensate, a quark-gluon condensate. Think of it like ice cream, okay? These are rather nasty little buggers. I mentioned this the other night when we were on the radio, Clyde. And I mentioned it yesterday in an interview that I was on. By the way, let me give you a little plug. Sorry, I know this is your venue, Clyde, but I was interviewed yesterday by a gentleman who has a good YouTube channel called Face Like the Sun. I recommend that you go to Face Like the Sun and listen to the interview that took place yesterday, because it will encapsulate everything that I'm talking about today.
Face Like the Sun was the first source for our first interview, by the way.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
Thank you. I would like you to have him on the air, if you would, please.
We probably will.
Okay.
Eventually, yes.
He is a phenomenal composer of videos, as you'll see when you look at the video that he did of our my phone conversation with him. But he is also up to speed on this information.
His videos on the magnetic field are amazing. If you want to watch how the magnetic field can be tampered by CERN, how the magnetic field can be tampered by anything, and watch how skyquakes are made, it's the most fascinating thing you'll ever see.
He does some beautiful work. He really does, and he knows what he's talking about. If I'm going too quickly, just let me know. But there's a book called Cat 9, and in the novel they talk about Ice 9. Essentially, what we're talking about here are quark-gluon condensate, shortened down to strangelets. Here are the characteristics of strangelets. Just going to shoot through these because it isn't necessary. I call them the cousin to the black hole. The reason I call strangelets the cousin to the black hole is they have mutually shared characteristics. What is it that is so unique about a black hole that scares us to death? Anybody?
Sucks everything into it.
Sucks everything into it. It attracts all matter and all energy, including light, into it, right?
It's sort of the Roach Motel of the universe.
It is. Very good. Roach Motel of the universe. Yes.
How hard we work won't mean anything if we get sucked into a black hole.
Very good. New theory of economics.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. All right. So if a black hole attracts things to it, so do strangelets, but not to the degree that black holes do. They attract other matter. Strangelets, once they form, are stable. They attract unstable atoms to themselves. Unstable atoms are everything in this room, everything that we normally, and therefore strangelets have an affinity for normal particles. When they attract particles to them, they grow in mass, they grow in size. Exponentially they grow. They become very heavy. When they are produced in the Large Hadron Collider, in the Castor detector, what ends up happening is they fall through the floor of the detector, through the laboratory, through the crust of the Earth, and where do they end up?
Core.
You're not allowed to answer any questions. Right to the core. What do you imagine would happen if it was at the core, if it's attracting atoms and molecules to itself? What happens to the planet?
It'll stop rotating.
It slows its rotation? Oh, that's a good answer. Very good. What else happens?
Reversal of gravity.
Reversal of gravity? It could change the poles. It could flip the poles, certainly. Yes, sir?
Doesn't it mess with the magnetic? Because the core does not provide the magnetic field for our planet?
It does. The iron core creates torsion fields and creates the magnetic energy fields around the planet. Yes, sir, in the back.
How about the weather?
The weather?
Affect the weather? Yeah.
Oh, sure. It'll affect the weather eventually. Okay, short answer. It consumes the planet and converts it to a neutron star. So the theory goes. Terraforming. All right? Now, not only does it do that, but it has the characteristic of being the most powerful explosive in the known universe. This is a non-naturally occurring particle in the sense of it has to be created in a particle accelerator, but there are particle accelerators out in the cosmos. Can anyone throw out a name of a type of particle accelerator that naturally occurs in the universe?
Supernova?
Supernova, absolutely. And black holes. That's why they're the cousin of the black hole. So they are produced in nature, but they're produced in a particle acceleration environment. When you look at a black hole, and it has those two jets coming out, and hopefully I'll get to that picture, but it has two opposing jets of energy, gamma ray bursts that are coming out of the black hole. The reason that that's happening is it's caused by the rotation of particles that are colliding and generating gamma rays as a result of synchrotron energy. That's why they call them a synchrotron particle accelerator. So what have they just done above us in the cosmos that they're now doing below on the planet with that terminology, synchrotron? What are they doing? Come on, guys. As above, so is below. Yeah, they'll create a portal eventually. They're mimicking what's going on in the cosmos. They are taking the model of the synchrotrons in the cosmos and recreating them on Earth at Berkeley, Brookhaven, in Jordan with their synchrotron, which is called the Sesame machine, Open Sesame, okay? And the Large Hadron Collider. Oh, earthquakes. If we're consuming the planet, we are going to see earthquakes before the planet's converted to a neutron star. Are we seeing an increase in earthquakes taking place? Absolutely we are. Have strangelets been produced? Anybody want to throw it out? Yes? No?
Yes.
What leads you to think that they've created strangelets already? Earthquakes. Go ahead, Clyde, except you're not allowed to.
Increase in volcanic activity on this planet, vents filling with lava, moving forward, moving backward. The idea that strangelet, if small enough or big enough, will bounce around within the Earth's core like a BB in a boxcar, setting all kinds of earthquakes and also volcanic eruptions through the vents. And we're seeing that happen more and more. We're seeing more volcanoes in oceans, volcanoes that are erupting that are usually called dead or dormant. We still run the risk of Rainier or even St. Helens blowing again because of this activity. And this all increased, by the way, after 2008. So if you want to see the increase of earthquakes that have been 8 or 9 or more, it's all been a factor after 2008, 2009, after CERN fired its first attempts at the Higgs boson.
That's exactly correct. They have been lying to the press for years. These are not my words. What I will put up here today are quotes and excerpts from published journals, articles, and websites of physicists and scientists that are concerned about this. Pardon the pun, the concern. Anyway, moving right along. CERN did admit in their documents that the scientists obtained, and if you want a reference, go to CERNtruth.com. CERNtruth.com is comprised of scientists who are trying to stop CERN. They filed a lawsuit back in 2008, 2012 in an attempt to stop CERN, and they were unsuccessful. They were thrown out of court as not having merit in terms of the production of strangelets based upon the safety studies that were produced by the people at CERN. Yes?
Was this an international court?
Yes, this actually was filed in Hawaii, interestingly enough, in the District Court of Hawaii. And if we get to it, I will show you a cover to a brief summary of that lawsuit. So they did admit in their internal documents that they were producing strangelets. 70% chance of that. Mr. Penrose was one of the people involved in trying to stop this. and he's continuing to do so. He's a scientist, by the way. Okay, here's where we mentioned, you know, the small nuclear explosions to model them, to rehearse them. And the PR is that, you know, the European Union wanted to do this for peaceful reasons, okay? Military-industrial complex. When we talk about 14 tera-electron volts, we're looking at a sum of 7 plus 7. Two beams, 7 tera-electron volts per beam, colliding, resulting in 14 tera-electron volts. Same thing that happens in the novas and supernovas that someone mentioned earlier. Sorry if I blind you with my laser, I don't need to use that. Anyway, this is very quickly just a summation saying, will strangelets be produced? But there's a word up here, Centauro type. That is related to the creation of black holes. Again, strangelets and black holes are cousins. Have you heard of Dr. Stephen Hawking warning about firing up this collider again? Nod of head of anybody. Have you heard of his latest, in the last couple of months, warning? What is he concerned about? Many black holes. The people at CERN claim that if black holes are generated or created, they'll be so microscopic in size that they'll just evaporate, they'll wink out of existence. Not so, says Dr. Stephen Hawking.
Energy just doesn't go anywhere, it doesn't just dissipate.
Exactly.
Transfer.
You either have matter or you have energy. Matter can be converted to energy and energy can be converted to matter.
How is it they convince everybody into believing that their strangelets are evaporating? I've always found that to be very stupid, and especially when you read books by Hawking or even deGrasse Tyson, how you're reading about how they are energy, they pass, they transfer, and they can remain. I don't understand how they've convinced the world that they can evaporate, especially those that are about the size of a dime.
Priesthood.
Yeah.
If I'm a monk, these guys are the priests. Okay? The reason I call them the priesthood, yes sir, go ahead, I'll continue with it.
My answer that Hawking pretty much was the first popularizer of the concept of black holes, and early in his theories about black holes, he theorized that they would evaporate. I don't think he still does, but early on he did.
Early on he did, much like Einstein. I should give you some background on both of those gentlemen in the sense that late in their years, and Mr. Hawking, or Dr. Hawking is getting early, or close to 80, I believe.
72.
72? Okay. Well, he's older than me. Anyway, and a lot brighter. Both of these gentlemen have reached conclusions in their later years that their early theories were either incomplete or incorrect. Einstein, to relate it to Stephen Hawking changing his mind about black holes, saying that yes, they persist, they do not evaporate. Einstein said in his later years that he did not feel that he had arrived at a solution to modeling the universe. In other words, the single theory, the one theory that would unify, the unified theory of existence or of the universe. What he was missing was the electrical component to the equation. He was focused on gravity, and all of science has been focused on the gravitational model of the universe, hence the Big Bang theory. It's 50% of the picture. In fact, it may be even smaller than 50% gravity. The electric theory, Clyde, you know this website, this is a fantastic resource, another one for you, the Thunderbolts Project, thunderboltsproject.com. Theory of the electric universe, plasma conduits, plasma energy being exchanged between heavenly bodies, much like we see between the sun and the earth. The point here is that Einstein knew of the electrical component of the universe, and yet his followers decided to stick with the gravity model and ran with it, and that's where we are today. We are missing a big part of the picture. Okay. September will be the collision of lead-to-lead particles. When you collide 621 protons together in a collision, and that's just a simple examination of a collision, you generate strangelets. You can also produce black holes at the same time. If we're looking at strangelets, we should be looking at black holes.
So does CERN, the scientists at CERN, do they know that they're creating strangelets and just forget about it, don't worry about it? Or, and if it happens, it happens? Or are they doing it on purpose to try to meet some sort of, you know, try to make some sort of coral or meet God or something like that? What's the bigger picture? Why? What's the reason why they are ignoring this phenomenon or this theory in which you're talking about?
What kind of question is that?
Excellent question.
Put a big E on the front of your cap there, my friend. Let's focus on big picture then. Let's get away from the PowerPoints for a minute. Why would you create strangelets? Why would you cover it up? Why would you hide the fact that you're creating strangelets? Why would you create them in the first place? Well, let's take the military-industrial complex mindset. What does the military like to play with? Weapons, explosives. What are strangelets?
Weapons.
The most getting tongue-tied. The most powerful explosive in the known universe. And they destroy stars, naturally. Not necessarily by consuming them, but by blowing them up. So this is a weapon that can be used to blackmail the rest of the world. New World Order, one world leader, one world government. If you don't play, you get annihilated. This is a cork glue-on cannon. Yes,
Can you
ma'am.
concentrate it like that and just point it out like a certain specific
Boy,
area?
you are right on top of it. Is that an excellent?
Yes.
That's an excellent statement. Not a question. The statement was, can you focus it? Can you direct it? CERN is a directed energy weapon, a DO. There are things called beam lines that come off of synchrotron particle accelerators. If you look at the one at Berkeley, the other smaller ones, they all are comprised of multiple arms of beam lines that come off the rings. These most definitely can be pinpointed and directed to a target. Now I'm going to step back for a moment away from being the professor to being a conspiracy theorist. The plane crash, German wings. Pure conjecture on my part, hypothetically speaking, okay? A directed energy weapon was used to pulverize the aircraft, obliterate the bodies, and they were lies. Yes, sir?
So this might be, I don't know, out there, but could it be that the military industry complex is looking at the fact that maybe we're taking this technology from UFOs and maybe those UFOs could be like the lightweight, like taxi UFOs, and we're dealing with other stuff, so they're looking at it as also a weapon in case there are other civilizations out there that have technology far advanced than us, and that could be it too.
Yeah. Again, I'm open-minded to just about any possibility and application of physics and science and the spiritual. The statement is, can this be used perhaps to defend the planet against UFOs, against aliens? Possibly. I have no idea. If that is the case, is there an off-planet society, military-industrial society that's on the moon, the dark side, on Mars, on other areas?
Well, I mean, just it seems like that's such a weapon that, man, one screw up and we could destroy our planet. Why would they even be screwing with that just to make a weapon to take out, like, say, Jordan, when we have all these other weapons? it would be
Sure,
like something for like another planet.
Yeah, exactly. Who's the target? Who's the enemy? If the military-industrial complex is developing a weapon, who are they going to use it on? Well, to finish my previous conjecture, it's to hold the rest of the world hostage and say, in essence, your nukes are now obsolete. We got a bigger gun. You need to sign a 7-year treaty. I'll leave that one for a moment.
What about that, like Planet X, the world that's not supposed to be there, but it's there? So maybe, scientifically speaking, they're developing something to eliminate a potential threat like that.
Any Death Star?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we look at movies like Armageddon. Yes, I am a monk, but I do watch a few movies once in a while. It's conceivable that we're going to use it to defend ourselves against incoming objects. Sure, if it's a directed energy weapon, you can use it against most anything. Do I think that we're looking at Wormwood or Planet X or Nibiru coming in, possibly through the southern hemisphere? There's been enough information out there that it looks probable. Is it close enough to be affecting the planet right now? It's not my area of study. As a hobbyist, I'm focused on what we're talking about today. Yes, sir?
You said something in the beginning that is what more and more research I do, it seems to be going to this point, it seems to be inevitable, that there was occultic things and the secrets of heaven, they call them, that these fallen entities taught men. That's why Egypt had the geographical knowledge of what they did with these star portals, these pre-Adamic star portals or whatever. And it seems that this all ties into that. And somehow I saw that you were going to talk about how this relates in with the mythology, with the Bible stories and all this. Where do you see this in Revelation and in books like Daniel? Where do you see this going? And is there a timeline? And yeah,
sure. The only timeline that I can look at right now is what's published by CERN, and that moves us through to Christmas when they'll shut down again for another 3-year hiatus, where they will change from niobium and titanium magnets over to niobium tin and move to 20 to 25 tera-electron volts. Where do I see this in Scripture, in the Bible? Now, I'm not an authority. I am a born-again Christian. I do believe in Jesus Christ. I do believe that He's my Savior. Okay? Put it right out there. I'm on a mission from God. Where have you heard that before? Blues Brothers, one of the best movies ever made. Okay, directly to your question. Bottomless pit. This is the key to the bottomless pit. I'm going to jump ahead because I don't want to stick to just the modules of PowerPoints. Where is the bottomless pit? Where do you think the bottomless pit is?
It seems to me the concept of the veil that this gentleman brought up before, it keeps alluding to that. It keeps reminding me of the story when Elijah was surrounded by those armies, and then his servant was afraid, and he asked the Lord to open his eyes, and all of a sudden he saw the flaming chariot surrounding him. It seems to me that there is going to be a revealing of these things, and so where that would be, I don't see it on, that could be on this earth or something like that. There's
Sure.
something that I'm missing when it comes to that. There's a disconnect that I haven't attained.
And I struggled with exactly the same thing.
One of the things that I could bring up, if I could,
No.
just to further his question, when he's talking about Elijah and he's talking about the chariots, he's talking about all that, always remember that Elijah's vehicle, known as the whirlwind, the gyre, the wormhole, was how beings traveled in the Bible. They would go up into a whirlwind, or they'd go into something that looked like a whirlwind, and that, of course, if you take a look at how the atlas and how the atlas is formed within CERN, you see that it is like that of a gyre, or of a spinning type of whirl of electromagnetic particles that could actually extend or otherwise create a conduit, much like a Rosen bridge that Einstein spoke of, where they can create a direct portal to the sun, or a direct portal to Saturn, or a direct portal to anything in the Jovian system, for the sole purpose of traveling, for the sole purpose of leaving this planet and going up through the stairway to heaven, much like what I heard Crowley brought up. Crowley attempted to create that stairway. John Dee and Ed Kelly also tried to create that stairway. Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard tried to create the same type of gyre that would open up and give a hole. So it's as he's saying, we have the power now with technology to create the same things that were created spiritually. So I would say that, yeah, that all fits into the idea that as these beings, these gods, or whoever they were, could travel. I mean, you go all the way back to the time, let's go to Daniel and Nebuchadnezzar, for example. The story of the men that were in the furnace, and how in the furnace they would be consumed by fire, but they wouldn't die, and they came back. I don't know about you, that sounds like a transporter in Star Trek. You know, these men go into this furnace, they don't burn, but they come back out alive again. Where did they go? And it kind of, you know, makes you wonder about things like when Saddam Hussein claimed that he was King Nebuchadnezzar, or when somebody claimed that they're the reincarnation of somebody. Maybe they had these machines, Stargate machines, transport machines, particle machines, that could create time travel or create the opening of a portal. I don't know, it just seems to me that it's something that's told to us several times over in the Bible. Unless you open your mind to the possibility, it most certainly doesn't sound believable. So, something to think about.
Did you get that off your chest?
I did, thank you.
Better than the other direction. How about you guys stand up for a minute, just stretch. We're at an hour and 15. Just take a little bit of break. There's water back there. To my right, our sound man, Matt Oates. Matt is a professional sound man, disc jockey. We're looking at, what are we looking at here? The electric universe. Again, the Thunderbolts Project, great resource. A different way of looking at the universe in general and a different way of looking at our existence. Mythology was brought up, revelation. When we look at the ancient gods, and I'm going to talk disjointedly here, that doesn't have reference to what you're seeing, but I want you to look at the screen, if you would, as you hear me mumble along here. When you look at the ancient gods of Greek and Roman history, and you look at the stone carvings that took place in the caves in Mesopotamia, and different places like that, what we are looking at is the manifestations, including the gods, the images, the statues, the carvings. We're looking at the manifestations of plasma energy, electric plasma. Now that may be a little different way of looking at things, but I ask you to put on a different pair of glasses. Look through the lens at what you've seen throughout your life and what you've been taught in school and you've explored on your own, through the lens of electric plasma creating what you're seeing represented in mythology. Some people have said that this represents what I've shown you as far as the detectors, the cross-section of the detectors at CERN. I offer to you that possibly that does represent that, and this does represent a linear accelerator, and also a representation of the curved main ring, as well as the smaller accelerators. But I mentioned that the initial starting point for the acceleration takes place in a straight line linear accelerator. So that may be what we're looking at here. But getting to the plasma specifically, these wings, these are Birkeland strands. These are plasma jets, all of these. Plasma energy represented in a form that is familiar to the people of the time. So it's a different way of looking at ancient history. Again, plasma, Birkeland, twisted, helical strands. What else is helical? DNA. We're looking back into time here into some of these areas where these relics, these carvings, these statues are derived from, back into the Sumerian times. What do you think this is? I've shown a couple of slides. What do you think this is?
Eclipse.
Portal?
Have you ever seen this before? Yeah, it looks like a portal, but it's not. It's an alignment of what? Planets. Which planets? You guys are good. 3 planets, not the sun. It looks like it, but the sun's not there.
One of them Venus.
Saturn, Venus,
Mars.
Mars. How do you guys know that? This is good. You've been
slides
around.
ago.
What's that?
2 slides ago.
2 slides ago. Okay. Paying attention. Very good. We're looking at it from Earth, Mars. Let's see if I can make this happen. Mars, in between is Venus, and then we have Saturn behind. Saturn is this right here. It is so close to the Earth that it blots out the sun. I will show you a couple of representations of what it looks like in different stages of the day as far as the sun. Here you see the sun barely shining along the edges of Saturn. This is Saturn. Okay? So what we're seeing here is the sun just barely, almost like the moon, shining down on Saturn, Venus, and Mars. How is that possible? Where are these planets in relation distance-wise to the Earth?
On the other side.
They're very close.
In the same orbital plane.
Same orbital plane. They're almost like satellites, geosynchronous satellites around the planet. And I'm getting to why this is important. This predates the Greeks, the Romans, and the Sumerians. This goes back, let's call it prehistoric, to caveman days. The ancients saw the world very differently and saw the cosmos very differently than we do. What is this that is streaming along here? What do you think that is coming down to Earth here? It's electricity. It's plasma, the electric universe. This fits with the Large Hadron Collider. This is taken by the Hubble Space Telescope. This is a ribbon of plasma energy. These are Birkeland currents twisted into a helix, naturally occurring. Massive, massive filament. Close-up of the same twisted helix. This is the sun up close. Yes, sir?
How is that taken?
Hubble.
That Hubble?
Yeah.
Optical.
Optical. Visible light energy.
Where?
Space.
Yeah, just in space. But these can be reproduced exactly in the same form, the same morphology in the laboratory. This is the sun close up. I apologize for it being blurry, but it gets the point across. These are Birkeland currents. These are plasma currents coming off the surface of the sun. You've all played with one of these, I assume. These are Birkeland currents. This is plasma. This is a plasma globe. This is the same thing as occurring on the sun, the same thing that we're seeing in the middle of outer space. These are Birkeland currents, plasma, helix. These are actually double streams, twisted, if you look at them closely enough. Clyde, do you remember when Bill called in and he said, oh, you don't get magnetism from electricity or whatever the heck he was mumbling on about? Right. Remember that?
Yeah. I remember that.
You take an electric current, you move a particle through it, you accelerate it through that, you create massive amounts of magnetic forces. This is looking down on that structure. What does that look similar to?
CERN.
The CERN symbol.
Saturn.
Bingo. What part of Saturn?
Pole. Pole.
Pole. Which pole?
Southern.
Northern. Good 50-50 chance. Does that look like something you've seen before? Particle detector LHC cross section. Okay? They are mimicking below what is going on above. Let me define this a little bit. Okay, some people may not have seen this. What you have are swirling energies, synchrotron energies at the pole, and they are operating in opposite directions. Have you seen that represented before? Particles moving in opposite directions, synchrotron energies. This is a large hadron collider, a super collider at the northern pole of Saturn. This has been in evidence for over 50 years now, since we've had the ability to look at it this way, possibly longer. Look at the center of that. That extends, as far as we know at this point, 60 kilometers into the gaseous inner workings of Saturn. Saturn is not solid. Looks familiar. Different view, different filter. Northern pole, southern pole. Why is this important? Make a connection.
Batteries.
Batteries.
Positive and negative.
Sure, sure, absolutely. Okay, we're talking electric universe, why not? That could be the negative end of the battery, couldn't it? Very good. There is a connection with CERN. Oh, come on, here we go. What are these?
Magnetic fields.
Clyde, what were you saying the other night about CERN and magnetic fields, the magnetosphere, the magnetopods?
That CERN, when it was about to fire on the 15th, NASA, in all its wisdom, decided to set up the satellite structure, which was 4 satellites to witness CERN's effect on the magnetic field, and whether or not there'd be something called a reconnection, which the magnetic field, as he showed you, looks like a spider surrounding the planet. We look like a huge tarantula. Well, what happens is if any of those fields that are separate from each other connect, it's called a reconnection process, and it, once again, back to Ghostbusters, if any of those fields collide and they create what is known as a reconnection, what is left is power that would go back to the planet in something called a skyquake, which would generate enough power that could, once again, be worse than a CME. And it's another reason why, theoretically, why we hear these horns in the sky blowing and these sounds in the sky blowing is because what you're hearing is you're hearing the vibrations of the skyquake that's done from reconnections of these magnetic fields above us. And CERN has the ability to not only reconnect, but they also have the power to blast apart anything that may be in their way to somehow create a conduit to either the sun or to some other planet, like maybe Saturn or Jupiter, or maybe even a moon like Ceres, or a dwarf planet like Ceres.
Most of us have heard of the magnetosphere. This is a breakdown of the magnetosphere, the magnetic fields that are generated by the core of our planet. You can see how far out these extend. The magnetopods is something that is getting a little more attention. CERN is morphing or changing the shape of these magnetic lines around our planet. So when someone says, oh, the magnets really can't do much, or as Clyde has been saying, there's information leaking out now that they're affecting the planet out to 200, 300 miles, and we've talked about the fact that CERN, every time it fires up the magnets, it's causing earthquakes. It goes beyond that. Again, just giving you the nuts and bolts, the breakdown.
They're estimating now that every 20,000 feet, whenever CERN fires out, it changes. So we're looking at, go 20,000 by 20,000 by 20,000. We will see an increase, decrease, increase, or decrease. They can't necessarily tell. They don't know yet. They haven't measured it. That's why we have those satellites up in space now to see just how much it does affect.
This is the sun. You've seen this probably. Many of us follow the online activities of various people that are tracking the sun. These are solar flares. The center disk is part of the sensor that blots out the sun itself. What you're seeing is out beyond the surface of the sun. Again, two different ways of looking at the magnetic fields on the left here, and on the right you're looking at, if you will, the solar winds with the Earth being in the center. When the solar winds, gamma rays, accelerated particles accelerate from the from the surface of the sun, they increase in speed the further they move away from the sun, just like in a particle accelerator. Because the further they move through the field, the magnetic field, the greater their acceleration, their velocity that results from that. This is important, and I'm showing it to you because there is a direct correlation to what's going on with CERN. This is what Clyde was talking about. When these spider legs are affected by the solar winds and the accelerated particles coming off the sun, it changes the magnetic field around the Earth. Okay, so let's pull this together. In my estimation, and we've got a few more things to show you if you want. In my estimation, when the magnets are activated and they're changing the shape of the magnetic fields, the long and short of it is the end point. What's the agenda? What's the big picture? They need to open the shields. Scotty, lower the shields. They need to open the shields in order to establish a plasma helically shaped, twisted Birkeland current plasma connection between Earth and the southern pole of Saturn. I'm going to let that sink in for a moment. Yes, sir.
And then what? Ride it like the Bifrost?
You guys just think about that for a minute, okay? I'll give you a response to your most excellent statement. We're talking about the theory of the electric universe. We looked at the fact that Saturn used to be very close to our Earth, to our planet. Wouldn't you say it's quite a distance from us at this point?
There always seems to be a huge occultic connection with Saturn, too.
Could you elaborate on that while I'm kind of digging through my files here a little?
Well, that is, it takes a long time to understand that. If you know anything about Stanley Kubrick and some of the research or some of the things that he would do, he would always kind of allude to things like that. You'll see a lot of people who have alien abductions. They'll have demonic experiences on Saturn and moons of Saturn that they'll talk about. So why that is, I believe that the theology that we have about the heavens in the modern day evangelical movements is not what the Hebrews were talking about. It seems that this being that we call Lucifer actually had literal dwelling locations. That's why there's pyramids on Mars that Voyager 2 found out. And somehow the heavens are directly related with the planetary body. That's why in Ezekiel 28 it said that Lucifer walked among the stones of fire, which was actually the literal planet. So I think that by understanding that, we understand that this is a very, very ancient, old connection that would, I guess you could spend your whole life researching this. So.
Yeah, well said. Well said. We mentioned the fact, or I keep using the word fact, this is all conjecture on the monk's part. Can I prove any of this? No. I base this upon the studies of the ancient beliefs, the ancient gods, the Bible, and other references. I think you'd agree with me, as you, I think, mentioned, the occult practices related to CERN, or related to Saturn, are widespread and have been going on ever since mankind's been around practically. You have to ask yourself why. Why do they have such an attraction or affinity to Saturn? Now this is where I really get to be weird. If you have your tomatoes, get ready to throw them. It's bad enough that I'm talking about connecting Earth to Saturn using the LHC to generate a plasma conduit to connect to the southern pole. That's wacko enough. But I've reached the conclusion that hell does not reside in the core of the Earth. It resides in Saturn. Therefore, it's a receptacle of demonic spirits. You can see my Christian influence leaking out all over here. But be that as it may, these are the things you don't hear on YouTube. These are the things you don't hear in the alternative media. I'm way out on the fringe here, and I recognize that, and perhaps I'm certifiable. Oh well. I think Clyde and I will have adjoining padded cells. Did you have something to say, or you're just acknowledging?
I was going to say that for those of you that don't know, Saturn was the original good father, the father of judgment. The planet was closer to the Earth at one time, and that's why you have wedding rings, because it was under the dark father and under the father, the good king, that you would actually marry. The ring represented the crown represented the king represented the court. The court would wear, the judges would wear capes. They would wear what they were called the freighter frock, or the father frock, in order to pass judgment. It was all about a Saturnalian judgment. There's also something called a Saturn judgment every 29 years, where you go through this in your zodiac. Everything before the sun became the object of our affection was all based around Saturn, and Saturn later became Satan, and he later became the dark father. And so everything you see representing the dark side of the force all has its roots in the dark father, or the Darth Vader, or the dark father, which is of course a representation of the dark caped unknown judge. So yes, that's stat your Saturnalian type of folklore. It all goes back to the idea that we worship Saturn before we worship the sun.
Can you open your mouth and say "ah" for me? Like your eyeballs. Yeah. I love the fact that Clyde has brought me into his world. I'm serious about that.
We all are.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Let me give you just a little scenario that played out, what, 3 weeks ago? You invited me for the first time?
Yeah.
I get a call, well, not a call, I get an email. I'm at work. I get an email. Yes, I play at work. I do have a regular day job. This is a hobby, right? Monk's hobby. I get an email about 4 o'clock in the afternoon from Tracy, Clyde's producer. Can you give us a call? We'd like you to be on the show at 8 o'clock tonight. This is now 4 in the afternoon. Oh yeah, I don't have a life. I said, I'd like to come in the studio. I don't like talking on the phone for interviews. He says, where are you? I'm in Portland. Well, where's your studio? Sorry, Clyde, I don't know where you live. That's his home away from home. A couple of blocks away is the answer. So I went into the studio that night at 8 o'clock, walked into the sound booth, and it was like an immediate connection for me. I don't know about Clyde, but for me, I felt like I'd always known this guy. This is one of the most humble and one of the most intelligent, and I don't just blow smoke, intelligent men that I've run across. and I am humbled by his invitation, both in the studio and here tonight. So thank you, Clyde.
Thank you.
Who's this sweetheart? And don't tell me it's a woman.
Shiva.
Is this a woman?
No.
Oh, you're right, it's Shiva. That's
Okay,
cool.
sorry.
You're good, Professor. I'm gonna just pick on you tonight.
Bring it up.
That's good. We're all friends here. We're of like minds here tonight. Who is this? Someone that beyond Shiva, define who Shiva is.
Destroyer of worlds.
Yes, the god of destruction. But in the process, she is also the giver of life. He, she, this is a duality. Does that sort of look like one of the components of one of the colliders that I showed you with all the brightly streaming wires coming out of it? Okay? They're modeling what they believe occurred in the past. The spiritual way of opening a portal in the past, devoid of technology, utilizing spiritual forces in the ancient times. Today, we're using physics and the spiritual to open a portal. We're using a machine to create Jacob's ladder. I bow to my biblical expert over here. Right? Jacob's ladder between the earth and the sun and Saturn for the passing of angels in both directions. The process, one is destruction, two is desolation. Did anybody happen to catch the little dance ceremony within the past week at CERN in which they showed the video of them dancing in the white open desert dry lake bed playa with a circle inscribed here just outside the ring? That's the desolation. Third step, new environment, creating a new life form, creating a new life environment, a new world. The question came up earlier. If they're developing black holes and strangelets, aren't they afraid of destroying their own planet and killing themselves? New plane of existence, new world. Destroy the old, create desolation, clean sheet of paper, and we go on to a new, higher plane of existence.
But they're not planning on being around for that, right?
That is outstanding. You're right. I'm going to cut to the chase. If they're opening a portal, it's because they want to go through the portal. But they also want to first bring from Saturn the entities that reside there, the spirits, if you will. Bring them to the planet. Those spirits need a host body, don't they? Some of those spirits will utilize the people who created the machine as host bodies. Have you ever heard of a hybrid?
Are you talking about colonization?
I'm talking about hybrids created in the laboratory using third-strand DNA, artificially created using the equivalent of a 3D printer to grow hybrids in the laboratory, hold them in a state of suspended animation in such time as they bring the spirits from Saturn to inhabit the hybrids and populate the world. That does not include us. Come right ahead.
No, I just said.
In case no one heard that.
Is that what they were doing in Genesis 6, or a type of this, or just more advanced?
Yes. The name CERN derived from Cernunnos, the hunter, the occult. You notice that the detectors are named things like Atlas, Alice. Brookhaven Lab has one named Phoenix. the rings of Cernonos, the rings. These are the rings. These are Egyptian. Okay. Go ahead if you've got some reaction or questions.
So you briefly summarize, like in the Bible it says, as in the days of Noah. So technologically, this is a joining of that.
It is. There's nothing new under the sun, according to Scripture, right?
Right.
I think we'd all agree that history is cyclic, depending on where you're from. This is as in the days of Noah. In the days of Noah, we had chimera, we had hybrid, we had the fallen angels, we had the Nephilim, the giants. There was the Tower of Babel, which some say is a representation of CERN, of the Large Hadron Collider. The Tower of Babel was destroyed and people were of a common language, and after that they babbled because the languages were divided so they couldn't communicate. The long and short of it is, we're seeing, if you follow Steve Quayle and people like that, they talk about Nephilim, L.A. Marzulli talk about Nephilim, giants. This is genetic modification. This is the human genome being messed with. And so you're creating animal-human hybrids in the form of chimera. You've seen the ancient images of the horse merged with the man's human torso, right? That's an example.
Mussolini.
Yes. Clyde, go ahead and fill in a little bit here if you've got something. I want to get on some more
that's
slides.
one of the reasons why a lot of people didn't understand the reason why we were talking about on the program Starbucks and their race together, and we opted to talk about the race to get her, which of course is Mussolini, which of course which is the mermaid or the fish and woman. The sign of alchemy, or the sign of combining the two, Jung had said that this is something of a dark archetype that can be fulfilled if mankind decides to fulfill the possibility with chimera, or creating monsters like the Minotaur, or falling in love with creatures like the winged angel or the fish-tailed mermaid. And basically the idea here is that for some reason there's I guess there's a group, a vast number of people who deep in their core belief systems find the mixture of man and animal to be sexual and carnal, and something that would be a future endeavor if we had the ability to do this. We do have the ability to do this now. We have the ability to create chimera. We have the ability to create human beings that can be like cats. We have the ability to create human pigs. We're experimenting with that now. But with what we have now with CERN and what we have to create the helix and all of that, we can do anything that God can do, and in some cases, I think the hubris here is that we can do it better. And so that's one of the reasons why we brought up the mermaid, because the mermaid was also a sign of alchemy, that through the milk and the blood, we shall boil it down to make gold. Well, they do the same thing in CERN, using whatever they do to create gold from lead. It's the alchemical promise that was made by the magicians of the past, and now the magicians and the priesthoods of the present are able to do the very thing that Crowley, Dean, Kelly, Parsons, and L. Ron Hubbard can do. And now here we are with these men that are literally priests in this world of particle physics and going beyond particle physics.
What is my role here tonight? It's to translate. Take the gobbledygook from the priesthood, all of their formulas, all of their strange names, strangelets, quarks, muons, gluons, and bring it down to something that we can wrap our heads around. I do a lot of paraphrasing if we have any physicists in the group. But I'm trying to make it something that's digestible. Look at the list at the bottom here. Nanotechnology, robotics, genetics, and artificial intelligence will transform our world. Would you agree or disagree?
Agree.
Agree.
Energy.gov, Department of Energy. When we talk about synchrotron particle accelerators, Berkeley, Brookhaven, et cetera, we're talking about Department of Energy projects. Did you know that at Berkeley, for one example, was involved with their synchrotron particle accelerator in the Human Genome Mapping Project? Anybody hear that? This was the beginning of my rabbit hole. I grew up in a little town by the name of Lafayette, California, not Lafayette, Oregon. That is just over the hill from Berkeley. It's between Berkeley and Walnut Creek. The Human Genome Project was run out of a laboratory in Walnut Creek. I think I was placed in a certain place at a certain time to be here with you tonight. I'm not trying to puff myself up. It's just bizarre to me, the confluence of things that have happened since I started this research and the writing of my 2 books, now 3. By the way, let me stop right there. Should you care to spend some of your precious commodity of time to read my books, they're available this weekend for free download at anthonypatch.com. The shopping cart reflects 0 on the prices. They were only $5 for the 2 novels, $5 a piece, and $2 for the beginning of my companion book of science. The companion book of science is focused on my 2nd book, which is 2048, Diamonds in the Rough. It is going to be expanded considerably post this evening. And you can watch for updates on my website. But my gift to you are the books if you choose to read them. They're novels. They are what I call a buffet of topics, scientific topics, many of which many people have never heard. Have you ever had the experience of walking along the street with someone and saying, hey, look up in the sky, what do you see? What did they see? What do you see during daylight hours when you look up in the sky most of the time? Aerosolized spraying, chemtrails. I was walking along with a lady friend one day and I did that. I said, what do you mean? That's just normal, it comes from the jets. She didn't say contrails, she wasn't that sophisticated, hence the fact that she's no longer in my life. I am a sexist, I'm sorry, as well as being a monk. Anyway, yes sir, in the back of the room.
Have you found any correlations to the blood moons, to anything that you're talking about, say the firings going on and different things like that?
First of all, I will say that I do believe that there is a God-constructed significance to the blood moons, that they are signs that we are to be paying attention to. And I have used them to try to correlate the schedule, it's at my website, of CERN's planned experiments to the pattern of the blood moons. And I do think that because there is so much occult going on with CERN, they are also following, if you will, the Judeo-Christian patterns and signs, along with the constellations and everything else. Yeah, most definitely there's a correlation. I think we can glean some hints as to when they're going to have certain specific activities and power levels taking place with the Large Hadron Collider. I will try to correlate them more specifically and put it on my website. But right now I've got some dates and numbers on there that are pretty close, and those represent the beginning of their blocks of weeks of experiments. Okay, where was I? Let's see. We are talking about third strand DNA. We are talking about hybrids being created, but we're going to go way beyond that. And this is again where I get to be certified and put in a straitjacket. In addition to creating this portal, this conduit, this plasma conduit, which is connected to the portal, which is opened by opening up the Higgs field, separating the WIMPs, the particles that they're using with these 14 tera electron volts to move apart and create the portal, interdimensional portal, and bring the spirits to the earth. They are going to change mankind genetically. I was talking about Walnut Creek and the Human Genome Lab. Berkeley, the synchrotron accelerator, they generate the brightest light, if you will, in the form of X-rays, not visible. They use high-powered X-rays to look at the structure of DNA. And one of the basic building blocks or components of DNA is protein. And they are able to look at the folding of protein and begin to learn how to manipulate the proteins and the structure of our DNA. The advanced light source building. Those arms radiating out are what I was talking about earlier, the beam lines, but there are many, many more of those. This is a cross-section overhead view. It's a little distorted, but it gives you the idea. All those names, all those labels are beam lines. They're termination points where beams come out of the main ring in the center, and out at the end of these beam lines they perform different types of experiments. That's where they look at the DNA, and not in every one of these, but in certain specific beam lines they will look at the DNA. Why is the Department of Energy involved in DNA? I'll answer that. This is looking out over the San Francisco Bay towards the Golden Gate Bridge. That's covered extensively in Covert Catastrophe, my first book. This is the interior of the Advanced Light Source Synchrotron. Kind of a blurry, but I needed to blow it up. But it gives you a basic idea. It looks very different from what we have seen at the Large Hadron Collider. This is your protein. This is one of our protein in our DNA. This is the folding of DNA. This is important to them because they need to be able to create their own form of DNA, to grow their own race for the new environment that they want to create. We go back to Shiva. Further examples. They have actually taken the data from these, created three-dimensional models in the computer, much like a CAD program, and then printed them out as physical representations using a 3D printer. The 3D printer is the tip of the iceberg. Here's something that I want you to encapsulate in your head. What we see being released into public venues, into the public knowledge, the mainstream, in terms of science, breakthroughs. I use the 3D printer as an example. It's the tip of the iceberg of hidden science and technology. Technology has been hidden from us for 30, 40, and 50 years. So the 3D printer is much more advanced than what we see. And it is used today even for printing human organs. And I'm sure you've run across that. If they can print organs, they can print the body. But they can also grow a body, a hybrid, from the DNA itself. I started this slide with this. The gold represents the third strand. It is comprised of silicon. It is coated with a nano-thin layer of gold. The purpose of the gold is twofold. One, it has spiritual connotations. The other is practical. You can impart digital information onto that gold nano surface. The purpose of this is to be able to control the body that is grown from this DNA. You can control it using a computer. So this new race of beings, and this is all factual information, you can search it out yourself. You will find third strand DNA everywhere, and I showed you some of the publications earlier that we're talking about. Just that.
Chemically, it doesn't degrade, so it's forever.
Chemically, it does not degrade, so it lives forever, is the statement. what was the original promise made in the Garden of Eden to Adam and Eve if they would partake of the tree of knowledge? And there were two trees. Go ahead.
They that they ate from the fruit, they will die.
If they would eat from the fruit of the tree, they would not die. They would achieve immortality. This is their physical way of creating immortality. It is also a way to control people. You may maybe have seen an old video that I did, an interview I did in January of 2014. It's on my website, in which I was talking about the dangers of vaccinations. The long and short of that conversation, that interview, was the fact that the mark of the beast is DNA, presented to you in the form of a vaccine that you will demand. Why would you demand a vaccine?
Because of the false flag effect?
Well, let's say you're sick, or you're afraid of becoming sick. Ebola, MERS coronavirus. You can go through the list. Pandemics have been in the news. Pandemics have been threatened. We've seen Ebola come and go. That's conditioning. So that when something really bad comes along, people in the mainstream who aren't thinking say, I don't want that. I don't want to die. I want the vaccine. That's how they get this into your body. Because you could not force people to take it, but you can get them to willingly take the mark of the beast, because we were given free will.
And it all matches the alchemical nature of turning lead into gold, the transmogrification of human beings have the gold within the DNA, where they can be controlled. CERN is involved with the fingerprinting of the brain. They're also involved with the idea of 3D printing of avatars, so they can transfer information from the brain to an avatar until they can put it into a body that can sustain that information and be able to rage on as to whether or not they're taking consciousness from the soul and placing it into that avatar, and whether or not you're capable of sustaining life throughout that avatar. So it's an avatar that is basically infused with something in the DNA, not a chip, and it's the building blocks that you are, which is your blood, carbon-based, 6 protons, 6 neutrons, 6 electrons, your DNA, and how they infuse you with the alchemical process of turning base lead into gold. Check.
Before I dive into this, do you want to stand up and take a quick stretch? Get a little water? There's a lot going on here, and I don't want you to feel like you're overwhelmed and fatigued by it. Let's take about 5 minutes, and we'll come onto this. We're 10 after 8 right now. I want to leave room for more comments and questions. What drives me is research, and I love rabbit holes. I'm not Alice. Please don't accuse me of that. But I do enjoy going down the rabbit holes and the discovery, the process of discovery. So I have my note cards. If you have topics you want me to look at, if you have things you would like to ask me outside this forum, you can email me, and I'll give you my email address. There's a contact form on my website, anthonypatch.com. My email address is super complicated. It's Anthony Patch, author, AUTHOR, @gmail.com. I will personally respond to you as quickly as I can. Usually it's within 12 hours, not 24. I do pay attention to my emails because I play at work. Alrighty. Are you guys ready for a new rabbit hole?
Yeah.
Sure, go ahead. Make it an excellent one.
My question is, since this is information that it's getting out to the mainstream to some extent, what do you think they're not telling us? Do you think that they are so far advanced that they're just giving us a little tip of the iceberg?
Yes. just to, again, put a framework around it, the technology that we're not seeing is at least 50 years in its development and application beyond what we're seeing in the present time. Let me give you another reference. Dr. Joseph Farrell. If you go to Giza, G-I-Z-A, GizaDeathStar.com. Can I see a nodding of heads of anybody who's run across Dr. Farrell? Clyde doesn't count. Farrell, F-A-R-R-E-L-L. Dr. Joseph Farrell, GizaDeathStar.com. Incredible researcher, PhD, not a physicist, has a religious background, doctoral background, but this man is the one that started me down the path of understanding how much technology has been hidden from us. And he has published numerous books. I haven't even read them all, but it's amazing what he's come up with. And he's on Facebook, and he's got his website. You can, purchase a membership and then be involved in some of the inside information that he provides. But Dr. Farrell is phenomenal. He doesn't do much in the way of interviews, Clyde, but he does occasionally. If you want to contact him, I'm sure he'll come on.
Before.
Has he?
Yeah.
Good.
He didn't talk about the Giza Death. He was talking a lot about Nazi sausages and things like that.
Yeah, the Nazi Bell Project and all of that.
He and I are like that.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you backed me up on that reference.
Sure.
And that
The
endorsement.
Death Star is a fascinating concept. It really is.
G-I-Z-A?
Giza, yeah, like the Giza pyramids in Egypt, G-I-Z-A. Anybody know what this is besides saying it's a computer chip? What type of a chip this is?
Microprocessor?
That's what a chip is.
CPU?
Sorry, I had to pick on you a little bit.
Go ahead.
CPU? Semiconductor?
This is a qubit. Anybody heard of a qubit? Where have you heard, what is it related to? Ark of the Covenant, a cubit? Yeah, and Noah's Ark. Remember? But this is spelled Q-U-B-I-T instead of C-U-B-I-T. But there's no reason to think that that's not why they call it a qubit. Okay? As in the days of Noah. This is part of an adiabatic quantum computer. AQC is what I call it. Again, anyone, show of hands, that has heard of an adiabatic quantum computer? And if you have, who manufactures it? Google. Good answer, but they don't manufacture it.
They own a couple.
They own a couple. Who said that? I'm going to beat you over the head. He's bald like me because he rubs his head a lot like me in consternation. I get to pick on you a little too.
Go for it.
Okay. This is an adiabatic quantum computer. This is the central processing unit. Exactly, it is a CPU. This operates in another dimension. This is connected to CERN, Google, Amazon, NSA, USC. Okay? The reason that this is so important is I want you to understand this is operating in the quantum arena. They're manipulating quantum particles through quantum entanglement. They're reaching out at the quantum level to a quantum portal, creating a portal, if you will, at the quantum level. They're taking what is called a combinatorial, that's a mouthful, a combinatorial problem, and inserting that into another dimension. I'm paraphrasing. The problem is computed in another dimension and then extracted through an interface. They call the interface a black box. It's a black cube. That should ring some bells. And then the solution is presented in our usable dimension. This renders all transistor-based computers obsolete, including the Tianhe 2 in China, which is the most powerful, the fastest, biggest, baddest supercomputer in the world, which runs on transistors. This runs on qubits. This was developed for the purpose of creating a cryptological code, a secret code. Who in here has seen the movie Imitation Game? Okay, fabulous movie. Didn't talk about quantum computers, but it talked about the fact that you can create a computer to crack a code. The German code, the Enigma machine, which was a mechanical code encoding machine. It was a mechanical computer, didn't use transistors. And they used a mechanical computer to break the code. I won't give the spoiler if you haven't seen the movie, but it's a fantastic movie from a science standpoint. Cryptology, the study of codes. This was developed so that they could create a code that no one else could break. If you do not have an adiabatic quantum computer, you cannot create the code that was created by that computer.
And who are they talking to with this code? Who are they coding?
Ah, very good.
Who are they coding
Boy, this is a plant, by the way. Outstanding. Okay, I'm going to jump and I'm going to leap to another subject. Clyde and I talked about Internet 2. Okay? That's what they're using to communicate this code with. This code is being used a little bit right now, but it's going to be used in the New World Order. It is going to be used with the Mark of the Beast. It is going to be used to communicate and control everyone who's left on this planet. If you look at the Georgia Guidestones, that's 500 million people out of 7 billion. Those will be the serf class. Those will be the worker bees and the hive mentality controlled because they are injected and controlled using a third strand of DNA. The third strand of DNA, which has the third gold-coded strand that can be programmed and controlled by a computer, will be controlled by the adiabatic quantum computer. The model that we have right now in this time frame, just released this year, the 2048. Where have you heard that number? Title of my second book, 2048 Diamonds in the Rough. There's a lot just in that title. Diamonds, nanotechnology, computers, there's a lot in that title. Going back to cryptology, 2048. Anyone in here a mathematician or statistician? Shor's algorithm. Anyone ever heard of Shor's algorithm? S-H-O-R. Good. 2048. If you look at that on a sheet of paper, it covers the whole sheet of paper. In order to find the prime numbers in that, it takes a supercomputer. No computer has been able to crack the algorithm of Shor's algorithm. 2048, those are the integers, the components of it. It took this computer, the adiabatic quantum computer, to crack that algorithm. Once they cracked it, they could use it as a code. Yes, sir?
How big is that in scale, that picture?
Yeah. Let me just say it's about the size of a quarter in terms of the armature around it.
Okay.
And this is roughly dime size.
Okay.
This is how the qubit is placed in a framework. And I apologize for the blurriness, but you do what you can with what you got. This looks like the spinal column of a human. Do you remember Star Trek, the Queen, when she lowered her head and her spine into the torso? Remember that image? That's what this reminded me of. It looks like our spine. This is the computer. This is shielding around the computer to isolate it from electromagnetic interference from the ambient environment. It is isolated, and just like the Large Hadron Collider, the main ring, it's superconducting. It's cold, cryogenically cooled with helium, just like the LHC. This environment that it lives in is as cold as outer space. You starting to see some crossovers?
Yeah, where's the technology coming from?
Where's the technology coming from? Could be aliens, could be reverse engineering. I'm not trying to be flippant with you. I'm just reflecting what another gentleman asked earlier. And it could be the result of reverse engineering in the sense that it's a quantum leap, sorry for the pun, but a quantum leap in technology in terms of computing. It very well could be derived from reverse engineering. Yes?
So is it a CPU basically?
A little louder, please.
Sorry, is it, instead of a CPU, is it like a communication device that talks to someone else and then gets the answer back, or is it like a CPU?
No, it's using quantum entanglement, meaning that you can have two particles in symmetry affecting one particle in this dimension and a particle that resides in a different dimension, of which there are theoretically 11. That other particle can be affected simultaneously through that connection, that entanglement between them that exists irrespective of distance. The theory goes that in quantum entanglement, you could have a particle on the Earth and another one on the other side of the galaxy, and they both will respond simultaneously to the stimuli or the observation.
So is it using like tachyon energy or something like just?
That tachyon energy does come up with the LHC, but it's not a big player. But it's not a communicated. Currently, with ESNet 5, using fiber optic connections, the throughput is 100 gigabytes per second. And anybody in here that's familiar with computers understands that's a lot of throughput. This is connecting all of the significant laboratories around the world. CERN created the internet. You may have heard that. Clyde's talked about it on the radio. The reason that it created the internet, in popular culture, it was for continuity of government in times of war, nuclear. It was really created for the exchange of information between laboratories. Remember, all the smaller laboratories I call the little brothers, the proof of concept locations. They feed information to CERN. But when we look at CERN, we look at the Large Hadron Collider and the detectors. The detectors are creating millions upon millions of bytes of data that comes from the trajectories of the particles that fly off during the collisions. When they're looking at the Higgs boson, it took them 6 months to crunch all of the data coming out of the detectors. And then they said, okay, high probability, 90% probability, we found the God particle. The point is that the information coming out of the Large Hadron Collider is a waterfall, it's a fire hose of data. So they had to delegate it out to other laboratories for it to be processed and come up with some pictures and models of what the heck they did or did not find in these collisions. The reason for the ESNet 5 is so that they can process the data through faster transmission in a more efficient manner. But this will represent Internet 2. You've heard Bill Gates talk about Internet 2 for at least 10 or 15 years. We will be locked out of that. That will be for the privileged elite and the scientist priesthood.
How old is that processor?
How old is what?
How old is that processor?
The process of...
No, the qubit.
Oh, the qubit, very good question. Okay, the first model was the 128, and that was publicly acknowledged in 2003. It has since progressed to the 512, the 1024, and now the 2048. The first was sold to USC and Lockheed. Lockheed Martin and USC have a quantum computer lab. It's public knowledge. They purchased the first one from, and I'm going to get in trouble for this, but I'll name the manufacturer. I have nothing against the people that work there, please. D-Wave. Write that down if you're taking notes. D-Wave Corporation, D-W-A-V-E. D-Wave is a British Columbia company. They manufacture in the Silicon Valley. They are part of Google. Google purchased the 512 model. Their public reason for purchasing that was for the autonomous operation of vehicles and facial recognition in the public. It goes way beyond that. Think of cryptology. Think of secret data communication and Google. Amazon is part of this as well. Amazon is one of the principal funders and investors in D-Wave Corporation, as is Google. The principal funder for Google was the NSA and DARPA. You've heard of DARPA, okay? All of these players are intertwined together. It's a nice family. You want me to stop for a moment? Digest the question?
Oh no, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
When you're talking about the quantum computer controlling us, do you mean literally that we're remote controlled, or that there's like a suspension of will and it'll just guide us to decisions? Or?
Hive mentality. There's one queen bee. We're the worker bees. Electromagnetic energy is used to control us. Cell towers, geosynchronous satellites. External energy will be used to convey that information and control us, and this goes right to the nanotechnology involved with the brain and brain mapping. The brain mapping project that the President talked about, that is a spin-off, a complete model of, if you will, or replication of the Human Genome Project. So our minds literally will be, those of us that are here, will be controlled, as well as the DNA being programmed and manipulated through external influence. And that is controlled by the adiabatic quantum computer. Yes, sir?
What you're talking about reminds me a lot about the movie Transcendence.
Transcendence, yes indeed.
Or Metropolis.
Way back in the early 1900s, Metropolis. Yes, Transcendence. If you haven't seen that movie, you should see that movie. That is a very good overview and snapshot of what they intend to do. Yes, sir.
Does this have anything to do, because I noticed they both happened at the same time, with the net neutrality all of a sudden going through, and then all of a sudden Google announced that they were going to start going through the web and deleting what they considered to be not truth? Could this have anything?
Like France announcing this week that it's illegal to have alternative media.
Yeah.
Alternative news sources, conspiracy theorists on the internet in France is illegal. Yes. That net neutrality is the beginning, that's the leading edge of eliminating the present internet and cutting us off.
So how are we to stay informed?
Carrier pigeon.
Meditate. Meditate.
I got to be flippant with him, so I get to be flippant with you. How do we communicate?
There drops.
Go ahead, sir.
My name's Emily, and
Oh, ma'am, sorry, it's dark in
you're
here.
fine, I'm short hair. I think about people randomly just all day, and I meditate, and that's how I stay in contact with people. It's great. It works.
Absolutely.
You just like think about something. Like if you just have a thought, and you guys all do it. If you just have a thought about somebody that you love, like randomly, that's like they're connecting with you in that way.
Sure.
And that will like keep us connected.
I talk to God. I'm flippant. Soon I will stand on my head. No. Communication. But in a practical sense, in terms of day-to-day tangible communication, we're going to be isolated. We're going to be subject to the control of whoever's in control. Sorry to be such a downer. Okay, artificial DNA, blah, blah, blah. Back to my lovely picture. You getting the picture? I pulled from verifiable sources. Just giving you a break from my monotone. I should define adiabatic. That means without heat involvement. Diabetes, diabetic calories, production of heat energy from the cellular breakdown of food that we take in. Adiabatic is a computer that operates in a super cold environment, and by doing so, it is able to achieve incredible processing speeds. Back in 2010, D-Wave Corporation on their public website said by early 2015, we will have a computer. They didn't cite the model number. I extrapolated that mathematically, and all I can do is 2 plus 2. But taking their first two models, it was pretty easy that 2048 was going to be the model that came out in early 2015. They said that that model will have the equivalent processing power of over 7 billion human brains on the planet. That's how they quantified it. The processing power, the ability to run computations, combinatorial computations, essentially taking every possible solution and cramming it through a qubit at one time and coming up with a solution that would be 99.9% accurate. No computer can do that except this one. And they can do it so fast that it is unimaginable, it is intangible for us to understand the capabilities of this computer.
And what's the question? What are they trying to do?
Sure. That, again, very good. Their original reason was to not only create a new code using Shor's algorithm as the basis for that code, but was, and this is human nature, money. They were developing predictive models for the commodity markets and the stock market to play the markets.
Smoke and mirrors.
Smoke and mirrors, but also to interrupt trades. See, the NSA has the ability to interrupt trades live. And when they do that, they can look at it and say, how can we take advantage of this trade? A put or a call. And if we can take advantage of that and leverage it, we can make a profit. And in nanoseconds, they interrupt, put in their own advantage position in the market, buy or sell, put or call, and then allow that order, say it came from, a hedge fund and they're trading, then they can derive a profit from that trade that they now let go through to the market, but they've taken advantage through that interruption. So it was for money, to model the markets, to derive money, to further all of what we're seeing in the black ops world right now. And there's more to it than that, but that's a short answer. In the back with the arm up, please.
Yes, is the NSA facility, I think it's in Utah, the large one they were building, is that running on Net 5? Is it using these chips that you're speaking of?
Is it running on ESNet 5? Yes, it's connected to it. Absolutely. Yes, sir.
So where are the computers located?
Where is this computer located?
Yeah.
Well, we have one with Google in Sunnyvale. That's the 512 model. There may be more than one. There may be a 1024 with Google. Certainly there's a 128 model at UC, and that's public. That's a public laboratory. Okay? And again, an excellent question. The 2048 model, I said, has the equivalent processing power of all the human brains on the planet. That is something that they pronounced would be released this year. And when they released it this year, they said, oh yeah, this is great. We have the fastest computer in the world, and we can do a lot of really neat things with it. What they announced in 2010 was that it would achieve artificial intelligence in early 2015. In the press release this year, they left that out. They are not talking about AI. This 2048 adiabatic quantum computer made by D-Wave Corporation is tied directly into CERN. The purpose of being tied into CERN is to help open the portal establish the portal, maintain the portal, and maintain the portal for the purpose of the connection to the southern pole of Saturn. You've got to have a computer to control this stuff.
So it's physically located with the CERN in that complex?
It's not physically located there, it's connected to it through the ESNet 5. As best as I can determine, it's in Google land in Sunnyvale.
Thought process, or?
No, it's a mechanical interface. Essentially, it's taking, a computer interface will take dissimilar programs, software programs, and make them have the ability to communicate with one another, and that's what it's doing. It's a translator, if you will. Yes?
What is your opinion and thought process about, I mean, it's like we all know about like the chip, the RFID chip, we've heard about it. Anybody who's been researching this stuff has known about this for a long time. So I'm wondering, how do you think we're going to play on selling this, you know, this vaccine or this gold strand DNA to us? And I mean, do you think like the modern evangelical churches and all these people who think that they know are going to be deceived by this?
Yes.
Who are the people that are going to be able to catch this and see it before it happens?
We will, that are sitting in this room. Again, an excellent, excellent statement and point. To reiterate, if you couldn't hear it, will the churches, pastors, clergy, will they be involved in the deception? Will they see the deception? Will they buy into the deception? Will they promote the deception knowing that it's a deception? Or will they fall victim to the deception? In Scripture, it talks about God bringing a great deception upon people. And I'm not going to stand here and preach because that's not what you came here for. But just historically, using it as a point of reference, as a textbook for a moment. I said earlier that we have free will. And if we were told that our DNA was going to be changed, we wouldn't take the vaccine. But we will be encouraged by our clergy because they are falling victim, as you've seen the trend and the pattern. Some of them will say, hey, my flock, this is good. Now, if any of you in here are New Age people, I apologize up front, but the New Age theory is immortality, like we talked about with the Garden of Eden. They talk about ascension to a higher plane of existence. Part of the deception will be all you poor people that are sick, your bodies that hurt, you can be cured. Your bodies will be immortal. All you have to do is this. Okay? And people will say, that's fantastic. I want to live forever, or I want to live for 500 years. That's the promise, that's the carrot that will be dangled out in front of people, is you'll be healed. One moment and I'll get to it. You'll be healed, you'll live an extended lifetime. And people not exposed to information like this will say, great, bring it on, baby. What do you think is going to happen when that DNA enters your body and begins to transform you? What do you think is going to happen to your mind and body? Stepford wives. And somebody said free will is gone. That's right. Remember in Scripture it says that God doesn't recognize those that take the mark of the beast. It's because your DNA has changed. It's because you're no longer human, you no longer have a free will. You will be controlled, you will be a worker bee, you will be a serf class individual controlled by the elite. They want to go back to the king and queen running the kingdom and the serf class taking care of the fields and paying taxes. That's what they view, that's how they view us. But they're going to send us the lie that says, you're going to ascend to a higher plane of existence. We have this machine that is going to open up portals, and we're going to reach out into another earth. They're trying to create heaven on earth, or move into a plane of existence here that they describe as a new heaven on earth.
Why would the EBEs let us do this?
What's that?
Why would the EBEs let us do this?
Who are they? I don't understand.
The EBEs?
Extraterrestrial biological entities.
Oh, okay. Couldn't hear you quite. Those that watch over us,
Right. Why would they give us the tools for this destruction?
that's a fair question and an excellent one too.
They always have.
Yeah, there's a line of thought, and I will. There's a line of thought that says that our benevolent ancestors are watching over us. Our ancestors from the stars, panspermia, the bringing of, through meteors and asteroids, our DNA, and we grew and evolved on the planet because we came here through panspermia, that somehow our ancestors from the stars are going to return to this planet. They've been watching over us and taking care of us and giving us this technology so that we can rise and achieve that higher plane of existence that they live in. I think that encapsulates what you're saying. But why would they give us the machine? Because they view it as a positive, not a negative. And I'm sorry,
No, that's all
go right ahead.
If I can kind of trying to create an overview of what you discussed tonight, and correct me if I'm wrong in describing this, but basically what I've come up with tonight is that you said that CERN could possibly create a portal from Saturn and possibly allow maybe fallen angels to then occupy surrogates or genetically modified bodies, which then will allow for the control of government or the world as it be, and then basically control people who want to stay alive to create this gold DNA, which would then allow them to be controlled by a supercomputer, and thus, if it does not do it, dies out.
Well said. You're accurate. It's about 10 minutes to 9. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, you were saying about the, you know, people will want this antidote, or not even antidote, but the vaccine. It's just kind of weird that I know this vaccine argument has been around for years, but it's been like just talked on the internet and stuff, and all of a sudden, have you noticed like the media has blown it up to where everyone is talking about it and arguing about it now? Could that be because they're trying to get people who would normally go, I'm not taking that? Because notice people who are the anti-vaccine people, the media or the news is calling them stupid. Yeah. Like, you're a dummy. Yeah. And you ever notice that maybe they know that...
It's a psyop.
Yeah.
Okay? If you can convince the masses that the people who do not take the vaccines, whatever they are today, measles, mumps, rubella, name your vaccine, are the enemy, then you've achieved your goal. You create the problem, and then what?
You create the solution. Or
problem, reaction, solution.
Hegelian dialectic.
Hegelian dialectic. It's a psyops, including radio, television, mass media, movies. All of that stuff is pre-programming.
So could we be coming close
including Clyde's program?
Could
I hope
we
he's awake because it looks like he fell off his chair.
Could we be coming closer to when they're going to do this?
So, like, as we're closing, I guess, like, on the brink of what I see happening, and like the air team, and I think everybody here probably sees this too, we seem to be right on the brink of war, and World War III. And do you see some kind of new order, or the UN kind of spinning this off to where we need peace talks, and we're going to start erasing borders? And when do you see the North American Union starting to happen? Are we about to kick off into globalization?
Yes, we are. It's funny that Ted Cruz has kind of been labeled in the last few days as the president of the North American Union, the candidate for it. Yes, what we're seeing, I mentioned earlier that strangelets being the most powerful explosives known to man and relegating nukes to being obsolete, to being a firecracker in comparison. You can blackmail people with this cork glue-on cannon into accepting a 7-year peace treaty. And you can delude Israel. I'm a fan of Israel, I'm a backer of Israel. You can delude them into believing peace and safety and take down their walls and believe that they are able to live in peace because now we have a new weapon, much like mutual assured destruction, MAD, that they had with the nukes. They're going to do the same thing with the Large Hadron Collider, hold it over people's head like a sword of Damocles, and say, there's no more war. Sign this peace treaty for 7 years. We're good to go. Take down your walls. Everybody's going to live in peace and harmony. That lasts for 3.5 years, and then wham, right up the side of the head. That's my preaching for the night. I think there was a question back here in the black hat first. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah. How much of this ties into HARP? And is HARP...
Sorry, it was the other black hat.
Sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead. You were first. I pointed at you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I'm a firm believer personally that there's no hope without action. And I feel like all this information that we're being given and that you're presented is necessary and appreciated, first and foremost. But what, in your opinion, can we do about it?
Have you seen the movie Braveheart? Now, that again is an excellent question, because am I up here to stir the masses and stir the pot and to cause a revolution and run around like Mel Gibson? No. I give you the information because I'm a reporter. I'm a researcher, I'm an author, I'm a reporter. I'm an investigative reporter. That's another hat that I put on, self-appointed. I don't work for anybody in that capacity. But as a reporter who holds the right to commentary as to what I dig up and what I report on, I pass the information on to you and others for you to decide what you're going to do with the information. You have free will. It is not for me to tell you what to do with it, what actions to take, or to stir up any sort of insurrection or lawsuits or anything else. It's up to you. You decide how you're going to handle this information and what you do with it. And that's not a cop-out, that's a position. I'm in no position to tell anybody how to live their life, whether we're talking about these subjects tonight or Christianity or any belief you have or anything else. I'm just a guy who's just trying to get along in life.
So who's researching a plan of action?
Hang on, there was a question in the other black hat back here. Go ahead.
Oh, I was asking, so is it possible that CERN is just the prototype, because with the history of the modern computer, the computer was very large when it was first developed, and then it became very compact.
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that. Very quickly, I almost left off an end.
These cannons that you speak of, in theory, can they be miniaturized?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, this computer will definitely shrink. These are prototypes. What we're seeing pictures of are prototypes. Most definitely they're going to be reduced down. I am going to be certifiable again for a moment, so hold your question. Don't forget your question. I'm going to refer to Scripture again, and that is because we've heard of the beast, the image of the beast. One of the other things that's going to be created is a beast, a holographic beast, not projected by a laser, but a beast that is grown from 3-strand DNA at CERN, controlled by the adiabatic quantum computer, performs wonders and signs and miracles. It will walk and breathe just like a regular human being. You can reach out and touch him. And that's who's coming. Okay? Oh, hang on. Hang on. You had a reaction or a statement or comment. Go ahead.
Who's researching a plan of action?
Who is researching a plan of action? I didn't show the slides up here related to the previous 2 lawsuits that were brought by scientists and other concerned people in the science world that were failed. No one. She's really anxious. Can I interrupt and go to defer to the lady? Go right ahead.
I'll email you.
Sure.
And then you will have an email tree, like a softball phone tree, and then you can just be like, you can BCC us on anything and be like, this is the group that met today. And we just like flood it with emails all the time.
Sure. I'm game.
keep in contact with people. I am the best person at like not talking to people.
Until
Like,
ESNet 5 takes over. And that may happen this year. Yes, sir. Clyde and I talked about that on the air. Go ahead.
Do you have time to go into how Project Bluebeam ties into everything you were
Thank
talking
you.
about tonight?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very quickly, snapshot of Project Bluebeam. Project Bluebeam is a holographic projection onto the atmosphere. We talked about aerosolized spraying, chemtrails, barium, strontium, thorium, aluminum particles make up the majority of it. Multiple reasons and purposes for chemtrails. One of the uses, and this is in the beginning of covert catastrophe, is for the projection of images on the atmosphere. Depending on the predominant culture and religious beliefs of those areas of the world, you'll have the Mahdi, Buddha, Jesus Christ presented. In my book, Covert Catastrophe, it is the benevolent beings, our forefathers and sisters and brothers coming back to the planet in the form of Project Bluebeam. Project Bluebeam is part of the grand deception. It is to deceive the masses so that they've heard of all of these strange sounds around the world. That's preconditioning. Imagine how people will respond when they start seeing images in the atmosphere. People already freak out when they see a tornado. Okay? Project Bluebeam is a holographic projection onto the chemical-laden atmosphere for the purpose of deceiving and controlling the masses, to scare the bloody hell out of people, be it a UFO or whatever. Thank you for reminding me. Yes, sir. Well, the question was, is there anything in the chemtrails that would react or interface, if you will, with the third strand of DNA? Yes, most definitely. There are bloodborne pathogens, dead blood cells, that are in the chemtrails, and we've all heard of that. That is part of the manipulation of our DNA. Already we have nanoparticles in our bodies. Those come from the aerosolized spraying as well. They're going to throw a switch through electromagnetic energy transmitted throughout the world. And the nanoparticles, the nanomachines in our bodies will be activated when they throw that switch. So in addition to the third strand DNA, we already have the precursors to that residing within us. Is there another question that I missed? Yes, way in the back.
I'm fascinated by Saturn. When you talk about Saturn and the South Pole, is that not the hexagon?
No, it's a spiral.
Okay, that's the hexagon's on the other side, right?
Hexagon's on the North Pole. I believe that there is a Birkeland hexagonal twisted helix moving right through the core from the North to the South Pole, interconnecting the two. And therefore you have the synchrotron energies generated at the Southern Pole, awaiting the connection with the Birkeland current plasma conduit that will be generated and transmitted from CERN to the Southern Pole of Saturn.
The second part, if I may, if Saturn represents sort of an extension of hell, some sort?
It is hell.
Well, does that mean that we have a substantial representation for heaven in our solar system?
A substantial representation of heaven in the solar system. Good question. I haven't thought of that. I haven't thought about that. I can't answer it.
I thought it was always the sun.
Yeah, the sun.
Zion.
Yeah, sure.
Zion, sun.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Black energy. Orion's belt as heaven. Sure. I'm open-minded. So, yes, go ahead.
What is your views of the rapture according to the portals you're talking about here?
Sure, the question is, what's my view of the rapture and the portals? Was there another part to that?
Well, is there a correlation? Could something happen where these portals, could be used,
Is a portal used in a rapture-like fashion?
Yes, of course.
Certainly, again, going back to the grand deception, part of the reason for Project Bluebeam, part of the reason for the chemtrails and the holographic projections is to say that the sudden disappearance in the twinkling of an eye of the born-again Christians to heaven, to be caught up into the clouds where Jesus is there presenting himself and meeting, is to say that the Christians were taken away by our benevolent ancestors because they were the bothersome Christians. They were the problem children of the world. And therefore now we will have the ability to transform the world into the Garden of Eden as we see it. I'm speaking for the, metaphorically, for the elite, the controllers. That will be presented as a false rapture. My position, to be very personal, in the end of our evening, is that I'm not going to preach to you. I'm saying I am a believer and adherent to the theory of the rapture, the presentation of the rapture in Scripture, and I am a pre-tribulation believer, meaning that before the 7-year treaty and the start of the tribulation, that those that have accepted Christ will be saved in the rapture. And you can throw tomatoes at me if you like, but that's how I view things. And I appreciate you guys listening to me. If there are any other questions?
Could you please
Yeah.
give please to your email address and
Sure. Yeah, my website address is anthonypatch.com. That's P-A-T-C-H, anthonypatch.com. And my email address is anthonypatchauthor@gmail.com. I want to leave on a positive note for you guys, and I echo the question that came up about, you know, what action can we take and what am I doing and that sort of thing. I do believe that there is hope. I give you this information because I want people to be aware of what is going on in the hidden agenda. When we talk about waking people up, I get a little tired of hearing that, but I appreciate you being here and listening to my conjecture, my theories, what I have researched and the dots that I've connected. I hope you'll take this and use it to your advantage and also spread the information around. I am not here to sell books. I'm not here to make money. Okay? I'm just passing on information like a reporter or a witness. And I thank you very much for your 3 hours of your valuable time. And God bless you all.
I want to let everybody know that we're going to be doing some other events too. At the moment we're trying to develop a time where we can get David John Oates to do a seminar as well, reverse speech. However, I am also trying to establish a face-to-face internet entrepreneurship. What that is that I have established contact with a man by the name of Robert Hollis, who actually runs an entrepreneurial gathering of people who believes in ground zero, only where they're putting us with an internet face-to-face type of format that we will be, we've been testing off and on throughout the month, but we're going to have an event on the 4th. So be sure to check Facebook. It's free to get in online. It's a 10-panel session, so you'll have to get in and then wait for your chance to get on the 10 pictures, but it's on Google Hangouts. We'll give you more information about that, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to get you face-to-face with some of these authors and writers and people online, and giving you an opportunity to make money to turn other people onto it. And also, if you're interested in furthering your education in the entrepreneurship, the reason why I'm promoting this is because before Ground Zero was actually, when we went doing the bar thing, we were continuing doing things on the side. One of the things I was doing is I was working at college, and one of the things that most people don't know, and I guess maybe you do know if you're out of work, is that the marketplace is different now to get a better job. Marketplace is different now to get to know people, and so it's best to have a network of people where we can all work together to find jobs and to basically secure wealth in our own families. So I've decided that this is something I want to also do in the next 20 years or whatever, how many years I have in my show, to push this information to people who know how to generate wealth, how to get you to be wealthy, or at least put you on the right track to either get a job or to do something else to help yourself, and also to meet people like Anthony and others who are, you know, who are untouchable. You get to see them on the internet, talk to them face to face. It's almost like you're really there with them. It's really amazing. I was, it's like they're right there in your home because they're right there on camera. So be looking at our Facebook page. We'll be giving you information on how you can participate in the face-to-face event that will be happening April 4th. Next month, we'll be kicking it off on April 4th. Hopefully David Janos will be there, Robert Hollis will be there, and hopefully some other people too. But we're going to keep opening up the doorway to get more up close and personal with guests and people who are writers and performers, so you can at least know that you have people that you're networking with that are pretty important people. So I hope you had fun tonight, and we're going to keep doing this. So thank you so much for your support.